Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. My name is David and on behalf of TFNation, I hope you're all doing very well. Today we bring you something special. We have gone back into the TFN cupboard and pulled something out of mothballs. That is the big broadcast. Moving forward, approximately once a month, I'm going to be sitting down with somebody involved in the Transformers or Transformers adjacent sphere and just having a conversation with them about whatever may be coming up. Our first episode is about to air in just a few seconds once I get out of here. But if you want to see these episodes early and if you want to see more exclusive content, you can always check out our Patreon. So, before we get to the big broadcast, we do have one other piece of business, and that is our giveaway. So, thanks to our good friends at Blockies, we have a set of the Wave 5 of Galaxy to give away, and I am pleased to announce that the winner of this set is Gordon Packer. Gordon, congratulations. This will be on its way to you. We'll be reaching out to you to get your details, and hope you enjoy building. Thank you everybody who took the time to participate and join in, but I shall end it here and I shall now get to my conversation with David Cousins. So if you're a fan of Transformers or Terminator, stick around. So that seems like a pretty good preamble to get started. Welcome to the big broadcast. David Cousins, how are
Hello.
you, sir?
I'm very good, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm not doing too bad. We are recording this on a Monday, so it is the start of the week, and I would perhaps suggest that it can either go up or down from here. So let's wait and see.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, so again, this is a show where I'm just going to be talking to a whole bunch of people in and around the Transformer sphere. We are hot off the heels of TFNation 2014. How was the show for you?
It was amazing.
Yeah,
I absolutely loved it. It was different because this time was obviously my second year. First year I was brand new and didn't know anybody, and I made a lot of friends on the first year, and so the second year was so nice because it was just turning up. It's like hey, and it was like catching up with so many friends.
mm.
It got to the point where I had to start factoring in, as you probably do as well, travel distance from one place to another to get to places quickly. I had to start accounting in for time to talk to people because I was kind of getting caught up. Like, oh god, I'm kind of losing time, but I couldn't just like run past somebody.
Oh,
And so yeah.
yeah, 100%. I've developed the walk and talk strategy. It's like if
Yes.
somebody stops me and they're like, "Do you have a second?" I'm like, "I do, but you're coming with me." Like, because I need to be there. So if you want to do it, we can, but you're walking and talking, you know. But yeah, so your first year was last year, and I remember
Yes.
we met at the bar on the first year
Yes.
talking about X-Men.
I mean, I'd really geared myself up for like when I was discussing it with my wife before I left for the first TFNation, and I was kind of like, okay, look, I might not make all my money back. Like we've got to get all the various fees and stuff, but I'm just going to treat it like I'll meet some nice people. I'm sure there'll be somebody good there, and it could be okay. And I was fully prepared for everybody to be entirely about the toys and just not pay any attention to the forge at all.
Mm.
But no, it was amazing. The loads of people. I've noticed it again this year. There's like huge support, and I heard this year some of the it's very nice. A couple of the TFN staff said like, "Oh, you're the first place I'm spending money at this year," which was really nice. And there's a load of people who, and they're not lying. They will come around on the first day, and they said, "Right, I'm picking stuff up from you tomorrow. I'm not getting stuff now, but I'll be around tomorrow." And they all do. Like
Yeah.
people have like an art day where they spend their first day picking up toys, and then the next day they come around and hit basically half the forge. It's lovely.
I think the Forge has been one of the best things that we've been able to produce. You know,
Mm,
it's like most cons have an artist's alley,
mm,
but I tend to find that, and this isn't a knock on other cons or anything like that, but it's kind of a free for all. Where
yeah,
there's an opportunity to sort of curate a little bit, and I think the fact that TF Nation is built around like a central pillar, which is Transformers.
Mm.
It means that, if you have, and I'm sure you've done this before, I'm sure you've, presented at a bunch of cons, but if you're right next to somebody who's doing, an all ages book,
Mm.
and you're right next to them promoting, let's say Terminator or something like that, the you're not necessarily going to get the demographic. Um,
No, that's true.
yeah,
No,
I always appreciate that.
it's really nice because there is. I think that's probably why one of the reasons why. Well, I'm not just saying this because it's you. TF Nation is genuinely, I think, my favorite convention, and I think it's because we all do have that shared interest.
Mm.
And so, once you see somebody who's attending, that you're going to have something you could talk about. And so it's much easier to make friends because I mean there are other conventions where the atmosphere could be very nice, but you could have no overlap in your interests at all.
Yeah.
Whereas like in TF Nation, you're kind of like, okay, I'm going to do within about 3 sentences, we're going to find something that we have in common, and so yeah, it's just such a lovely atmosphere.
Yeah, and like it's the creativity I always find with a forge. It's like, on one table you can have, someone like yourself who just has these incredible prints, and just incredible pieces of artwork. But then the next, you've got somebody who is just making like pin badges, and
Mm.
but it's based on a completely different,
Or t-shirts,
or t-shirts.
because
Yeah.
I'm wearing my Lukens t-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Like I just love that creativity. As somebody who has like no creativity in his body, like I have ideas, and I get better people to you know to make it. It's yeah, it's truly wonderful. My only regret is
Yeah.
sometimes like is just finding the time to catch up with people and go through everything. But
Oh yeah, it's the same. I think that's probably the case for a lot of us. I think,
mm,
well, I can't say for the guests, but certainly for like everyone, like you're presenting loads and organizing things, and then yeah, there's like everybody at the forge, like selling stuff, and so there's a lot of our days taken up by like I need to be here and do a thing,
mm,
and
yeah.
so yeah, it can be really hard to catch up with people, and there's yeah, because it took. I was well into I think Sunday before I properly talked to Chris McFeely. So we briefly kind of said hi like a number of times, and he was like, "I've not seen you yet." I was like, "No, I know,
Yeah.
it's nuts."
Well, I suppose as well, there's also a different dynamic for you because as a professional comic book artist,
Hmm.
uh, there's there must also be at the con sort of a, a time to be set aside for a bit of networking as well.
Yeah, it's you try to as much as you can.
Mm,
I mean, it's very tricky to steal those moments though, because like because when everybody is selling,
mm,
they're all that like they are like you have very fragmented conversations. If somebody comes up to my table to talk, for example, it's very much like I will talk to them, but then like, if somebody turns up, I go, oh, okay, 2 seconds, and then I kind of like because I like to give everybody at my table some time.
yeah, of
I don't
course.
want to be one of those people like I'm talking to the important person over here. Like you can wait. So it's like no, I'd like love talking to everybody. Um, so yeah, I kind of tried to snatch moments just before we open, like to
Mm.
quickly chat to people. Or I mean, it's like I ended up like bumping into like Nick in the hallway, and we had like a conversation in the hallway rather than like to
It
catch up
was so
properly.
funny because I bumped into that conversation. I was like, "Oh, hello,
Yes.
chaps!" And then I immediately saw that you were both talking about work, and I was like, "I'm going to leave you two to it."
Oh, you could have joined in. That would have been fine.
Yeah, except for the fact that I would have nothing to contribute. I would just be like, "Oh, that's so cool." Um, so let's talk a little bit about your career then. So,
Yes.
but art been a passion for you your whole life?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was forever like scribbling things, and it kind of I realized I was getting better at it when way back in school when like if I drew a picture my grade would go up with whatever the assignment was. So I ended up starting to just draw like an entire page of something just to boost my averages. Um,
Which
yeah,
probably went really weird in maths class.
yeah, I got it didn't go so well in math class, and I did once have it in my business studies A level. I was drawing something, and I got a comment of like, "It's very nice having this image of it, Gillian Anderson in the margins, but they will mark you down for this on the exam board."
You're just like, but it's Gillian Anderson.
Yeah,
It's stunning. Like, what's the
yeah.
problem here?
I was like, yeah, it's like, come on, this is like peak X Files popularity time. I thought that was worth something.
Yeah. Um. So, what sort of inspirations were you drawing on, and then, as a, no pun intended, as a kid?
This probably is very kind of appropriate to the audience, but I was very inspired by cartoons of the 80s, and it was and as I think is quite clearly translates into my artwork these days.
Mm,
It was like very much like the energy of like Transformers compared to say some of the Hanna Barbera like kind of filmation stuff was quite static, and you
mm,
had the same poses that they filmed. And like as a kid, I used to notice with He-Man, you get the same running animation going like towards the camera, and
mm.
every character had the same run, and it used to bug me. Whereas in Transformers, it was kind of very much. Well, I mean, like you think of the movie, that's still the animation quality is so good in that, and the motion is like it's so exaggerated and over the top, and it's kind of wonderful. And so that, and to seem very very on brand, the Transformers comic from the UK was the other thing which kind of really like the early Jeff Senior stuff. Um, that really kind of got me started,
Yeah.
and then eventually in kind of I carried on with cartoons. Then in like '93, I saw the X-Men cartoon, and then that then got me into comics. I was completely in then after that.
Yeah. And what sort of comics were pulling you in then when you were a kid?
Well, initially, I went very much with the X Men cartoon being the gateway. I
Mm.
went and got it was Uncanny X Men 304, which would just happen to be like in a news agents at the time. And I said, "Oh, Dad, can I have that?" He's like, "Yeah, sure." And so I very much went all in on the X Men and kind of Marvel stuff for a bit. So I sat through a lot of the bad '90s stuff.
I was about to say being a X-Men fan in the 90s is certainly an ups and down. It's a peaks and
Yeah.
valleys sort of, yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
there's a lot of time. I think the artist did all the heavy lifting. So I'd be
yeah.
like looking at things like, oh wow, this looks really good. This story makes no sense, but the art's really good.
Well, this is it. This is kind of one of those funny things about X-Men 97. I remember having a conversation with Chris McFeely. Like, this
Mm,
was before the show dropped, and we realized that it was exceptional.
mm,
But it was the worry of it because it was like everybody remembers the X-Men 93 cartoon so fondly. But what a
mm.
lot of people seem to forget is the fact that what it was doing was it was pulling from stories from Claremont's 70s, 80s,
Yes.
like
Yeah.
X-Men run. It didn't pull anything from the 90s. You know,
No, no, it didn't. No.
it's like, but I won't lie, and spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't
Mm,
seen X-Men 97, but the very fact that the end of that show was basically Fatal Attraction slash Apocalypse origin story slash we're leading to Onslaught
mm.
just fills me with the most 90s excitement. Like,
Oh, it was so good. I think I probably spoke to a lot of people on the forge about this. Like people who came to my table because I was obviously selling the X Men print. Um, when it was first announced, I was very skeptical, and I come on, we don't need this. This is going to be a cynical cash grab. But of course, I watched it because I had to. I was duty bound to do so. And after the first episode, I was like, okay, that's not bad.
mm,
And then by the time episode 5 hit, I was like, oh my god, I love this show. It's so
yeah.
good.
It was funny. I went back to watch some of the old X-Men before it dropped,
Hmm.
and the show doesn't really hold up. Like, the animation is rough, you know.
Oh yeah, no, it is. It's really funny. 97 is like one of a list of things where it's kind of like nostalgia vision. It is the show as you remember it being rather than how it was.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I found the same thing. It's like 'cause I had a lot of fondness for it when I went back, and much like a lot of the old G1 cartoon, you can look at it
So,
and think like I loved this at the time, but like now this is almost painful.
yeah. This is why I often feel like I'm bursting a lot of bubbles with people because generally during a TFN or some kind of Transformers gathering, you'll always have one person, around our age or something
Mm.
like that, and say, oh, I really wish they would do a season 5, or I wish they would do, the in between years from the end of season 2 to Transformers the movie. And you turn around and you say, like, yeah, but do you realize what you're asking for here? Like, what you want is you want Transformers the movie again.
Yes. Yeah,
What
100%.
what you're getting is bot. Like, you know, like I always say to people, it's like, what was the last bit of Transformers cartoon media that was out before Transformers the movie? Bot. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's it's
Yeah, it's very much rose tinted glasses. If you look back at the old, it happens actually, not just Transformers. I think every single fandom. If you go on any YouTube video where they're showing something like an old cartoon, the comments will be littered with "they don't make shows like this anymore. This is the," and it's like, it's good that they don't. They're not. They
yeah.
don't hold up. It's like it's.
I,
I mean,
I
I love them, but no.
yeah, and don't get me wrong, like there are some gems. I mean, my favorite Transformers episode of all time,
Hmm.
accounting for nostalgia,
Yeah.
is a Generation 1 episode. Like there are things in there that are wonderful, but you've got to sift through them because they need to make syndication.
Which one?
War Dawn.
Ah, okay, nice.
Yeah, like, it's like he's the boy, like, you know, um, and with the exception of Transformers the movie, the "I'm your worst nightmare" line is just like, you know, um, but again, like, and I will say to people, if I'm being objective,
Yeah.
like, is War Dawn better than Code of Hero? No, of course it's not. Like, it's not better written, it's not better
Yes.
acted.
Yeah.
It might be better animated purely because Beast Wars is showing its age, but
Yeah.
you know, um, and it's total nostalgia. But
Yeah.
War Dawn is ace, like, and that's coming from somebody who doesn't even care about the aerial bots. Um,
Yeah. I mean, hey, I like Call of the Primitives.
oh
And
yeah, but as an artist, I'm not surprised.
yeah, I mean, a lot of it I think comes from. I think as a kid, I kind of I very much uh, I knew I was responding to something more visual in that one because that's why it stuck in my head. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I
I
I
think
must admit, Call of the Primitives.
like the Primacron thing is nonsense.
Yeah,
But it's good fun.
it's
Oh, I can't hear.
yeah, like with Call of the Primitives, I always find
Uh-oh.
that, it's got a great hook to it. There's a mystery involved, which is really cool, but at the end of the day, the payoff is where it's like, all right, so it is a little goblin man.
So, I'm really glad. My I'm not going to say the name because I said something that sounded like it, but the Apple Assistant on my phone, on my AirPods, just kicked in. So, and it muted you momentarily, and I just
Oh,
came in at the tail end of that, and I completely agree.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just
I was holding on, thinking like, please, Sam, kick back in a second.
yeah. No, I think there is some great stuff to be had, but if
Hmm.
anybody ever turns around and says, like, where does somebody start with Transformers? It's like, okay, if you want to experience
Oh
G1,
yeah,
you need to experience G1 first, because anything that you watch after that, Beast
yeah,
Wars, Beast Machines,
yeah.
Animated, Prime, you're going to find going back to G1 incredibly hard.
Yes.
Like, so, but
And it's funny because I can always use like obviously the '86 movie is a high point, but from an outsider's perspective, if you came into that and that was the first thing you saw, that would seem like a fever dream.
I I couldn't like I remember I'm maybe you're the same, like
Yeah.
I think part of the reason that I'm still involved in this franchise and this fandom to this day,
Hmm.
and I think that this goes for most of us who are of an age,
Yes. What,
is because of
27?
is because of Transformers the movie.
Yes.
Like,
Oh yeah, 100%.
it's the glue that sort of binds everybody together, because if if it was just the Sunbow cartoon and
Yeah.
Transformers the movie didn't happen, like, okay, it was cool for its time, but then you would move on to Ninja Turtles, and then you would
Yes.
move on to Power Rangers or whatever it is,
Yeah.
you know. Whereas, yeah, I mean that movie, it's like 40 years later, almost.
Yeah.
It's
Wow.
just incredible. And I'm working on something at the minute, like just exploring like the first 20 minutes of like that movie.
Oh, really?
You know, because like I think when people talk about Transformers the movie, they talk about what they're talking about is the first 20 minutes of the movie. And then there's that bit in the middle, and then there's the big set piece at the end. You know, like that's kind of like the three acts of
Yes. Yeah,
Transformers
that's
the
true.
movie. You know, it's no, I've never met a single person who's like, oh yeah, my favorite bit is the bit on Junkion. You know?
No, that's true. And, do you know what, as a kid, that was the hardest bit I had to rationalize. I didn't enjoy that as a kid. It's like as an adult, I find it kind of fun.
Yeah, eggs with multiple faces, no problem whatsoever.
Yes, yeah, that's fine. It's just
Uh,
the big dance, the dancing at the end.
yeah, but I like so I've been rewatching the first like 20 minutes of Transformers, like trying to
Hmm.
figure out like exactly what makes it tick, like
Yeah.
as a piece. And like I went into it thinking to myself, like, oh, it's clearly it's because it's the one time on screen, and even still to this day, I think, where like we've had a genuine depiction of like what a fight would or should look like. Because, you know,
Yeah.
due to budgetary constraints, things like that, Transformers has always been not a war, but like a skirmish. It's just
Hmm.
a couple of people
Yes,
having
yes,
a
that's true.
bit of a Barney, and that's it. But I think like what I've taken away from that, like watching that first 20 minutes, is it's a masterclass of character writing in terms of introducing the 86.
Hmm.
From the introduction of Hot Rod to um what is effectively the end of sort of Act One, or the first part of Act One, which is sort of um the blaster cassette thing. You know, when
Yes.
it makes
Yeah.
the hard cut to
Yes.
later.
Yeah.
Um, like every single character who was introduced in that like chunk of time is so well developed in like, you know,
Yeah.
2 seconds. You've got Hot Rod running through the sign. He's brash. He's arrogant. You've got Cup. You know, he's the stern old guy.
Yes.
You've got Ultra Magnus, who's the leader, who's just like, right, we're doing this now.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the caring side to RC. It's so well done, and yet, like everybody's just go, oh, it's really cool when they shoot each other. It's like, yes, it is, but there's more to it.
It is, but no, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of the strength of that is the characters, because I think it's almost all of the movie cast is that's kind of what I think about with each one of those characters
Yeah,
is how they
yeah,
are there. I mean,
definitely.
I do have some time for this unpopular opinion. Season 3 Rodimus of him, almost like a beleaguered parent, where he's just like, I don't think I want this anymore.
Right?
And he just seems he's so like he's got that line where he says to Magnus like, "Oh, can I interest you in a used mantle?" Like the mantle of leadership, and it's like, yeah, it's kind of funny. It's like, yeah, this wasn't what he'd expected, and like he's having to grow up, and he's
Yeah.
not that teenager anymore, and he's got to deal with responsibilities, which I quite like. But yeah,
I think had, let's say for example, like transform, they're making season 3 now,
Hmm.
like with the more with the ability to tell a more mature story, similar
Hmm.
to what we got with X-Men 97.
Yes,
Um, like Rodimus would be like everybody's favorite, because yeah, like
yeah, yeah.
if you just take him into a vacuum, like what he goes through in season 3, like
Hmm.
my favorite one is just that, you know, he wants rid of responsibility so bad that he's
Oh, he just hands it
turned it
over.
over
Yeah,
to a zombie the first chance he
yeah.
gets.
He's
Yeah,
like, here you go, I'm out.
yeah. It's like, you know,
He's like, I don't want it.
I'm not going to question how he's still alive. I'm not going to question why he seems like he's constantly in pain or anything like that. Here, mate.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and it's the line
And
as well. It's delivered. It's delivered. You know, very earnestly and stuff. You know, this
mm.
is yours. But he's just like, nah, here, this is yours, man. Like,
Well, yeah, because he hands it over, and I think doesn't he immediately after say, "Woohoo! Hot Rod's back."
yeah, exactly. You know, it's and that's it. Like, obviously, we had Michael Charles Hill here
Yes.
this year, and one of the things that I wanted to talk to him about was Burden Hardest to Bear, because it felt like that was, the it was the full stop. It was like, right,
Mm.
this is the episode where Rodimus like accepts his role, you know,
Yes.
and talking to Michael about that and about how he wrote it around, the code of the samurai and stuff like that, and taking personal responsibility, giddy, all the burden
Mm.
hardest to bear. I thought that was wonderful, and then it's totally undercut by the fact that Optimus Prime comes back in the very next episode,
Yeah, I was like, oh.
knocks him out, and just pinches the Matrix from him, and that's the end of Rodimus Prime.
Yes. Yeah, it's a bit of a shame.
It is. But so let's talk a little bit about some of your work then. So
Yeah.
you well, let's talk about what's currently coming out, because you're working on the new Terminator book. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm on. I was trying to think. Yes, yeah, I can say all these things. Yeah. Occasionally, if I pause, it's because I'm just thinking, what am I allowed to say? What am I not?
NDAs floating around.
Yeah, it's yeah, because there's a few other things, but yes, the new Terminator comic series that's coming up from Dynamite Entertainment, which is being written by Declan Shelby. That's getting a massive push. It's like it's on the cover of Previews magazine. There's lots of kind of buzz about it. I'm on the variant covers. So that's been good fun, and that was all literally just from the editor did a call out on Twitter, and often I don't know if you would have seen these things, but this happens every so often. There's like somebody who can commission something, will say like, okay, like drop a link or something in the tweet below, and it's like a feeding frenzy. And when I looked at his tweet, there was like over 1,000 people who had already replied, and they're all kind of pushing their own stuff. And I said, do you know what? Like, hell with it. This is going to take me 2 seconds. I've got all the files on my phone, and so I just literally said, like, oh yeah, I'd be interested. He didn't say what it was specifically. He didn't say Terminator, and I just dropped down. I think an Optimus Prime thing, X-Men thing, a couple of others. And I didn't hear anything back for weeks, and so I didn't think anything of it. It literally it went out of my head as far as that was the case. And suddenly got an email from him, said, "Oh, I really love your stuff. It's like I'd like to give you like a series of covers." I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure." So it's like, yeah,
This
it's
doesn't
like,
really work for me, I'm afraid.
I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe. And then he said like it'd be on Terminator, and I was like, okay. And yeah, but the only downside to it at all was that he's literally like, "And can you do it in 4 days?" And I was like, "Yes, yes, I can." I was like, "That's fine." And so yeah, I just went out and said, "Right, I'm going to be working this weekend." But
Yeah, rule one of talking to an editor: never say no.
yeah, it's like yeah. It's like, I mean, I've been freelancing for at least 15 years now, so yeah, you find ways of making things work.
Mm.
But no, it's really good fun, and the nice thing about the Terminator thing is that I don't have to explain it.
Mm.
Whereas, like, say, we were talking before about there's an anthology from Boom Studios that I just was part of, and it's called Hello Darkness, and it was a horror anthology. And it had like Garth Ennis from like The Boys and Preacher, and R.L. Stine from Goosebumps, and like it was a murderer's row of talent. And but the thing is, I have to say that preamble every time. And it's
Yeah.
like so. It's like I was in a sold out anthology. Doesn't sound much, and then you kind of add in like, oh no, it's with all these people and the story who I illustrated with the writer Dave Cook. We got promoted to the first issue as well, so that was really cool. But I have to say all of that, whereas I can just say to anybody, "I'm on the covers for Terminator," and they go, "Oh, I know that."
Yeah.
So that's really nice.
Not many people going Terminator.
Yeah, I go, "What's that?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
and
there's sorry.
oh no, go on.
Oh no, I was going to say that there are a few more things like that in the pretty near future, but I can't say them. And these things are always up in the air until they're confirmed. Absolutely.
Companies like Boom and Dynamite, Image to some degree as
Mm.
well. Right now, they're really cooking. Like,
Oh yeah.
I mean, Boom had that success. I mean, we're talking a good few years now, but they've
Mm.
had that, massive success with Power Rangers, which sort of like
Yes. Yeah.
came out of nowhere. Real like I'm perhaps underselling this a little bit, but like really catapulted like Dan Mora to
Oh yes. Yeah.
like a level that is absolutely fantastic. You know,
Yeah.
it,
And
it,
well
it
deserved too.
oh, absolutely, absolutely. But to be going from uh, uh and I say this like as somebody who loved like the Power Rangers
Oh yeah. Yeah.
book,
Yeah.
to go from like Power Rangers to he's working alongside Mark Waid on the Superman Batman book from
Mm.
DC, the world's finest book. Is just incredible.
Oh yeah.
Like he's doing so much good work. But the point that I was about to make there is just that it frustrates me a little bit, especially with the big two,
Mm.
that these smaller publishers are just out messaging them.
Oh yeah.
They're I mean, look, we saw there was a story knocking around the other day that Transformers is outselling every DC comic book.
I was literally just about to say this. Yeah, the latest Skybound one is like outsold Batman.
Yeah, Daniel Warren Johnson obviously is a name that carries a lot of weight in comic books anyway.
Mm.
But the fact that he's riding high on this book, and the fact that we're what, like 10 issues in,
Mm. Yeah,
like,
yeah, not even that far in, and it feels epic.
but at the same time, like, for a new property to be still selling that well at issue 10, because
Mm.
this, but if anybody who's listening doesn't know this, generally comic book numbers, you see them
Oh,
do that.
huge drop. Yeah,
Yeah, especially
yeah,
from like an issue 1.
yeah.
And the fact that it's still riding so high, perhaps on the back of several Eisner Award wins, maybe. But
That won't hurt. I think there's been a nice amount of um, non-Transformers fans.
mm,
I think have started to pay attention to it. I think there's a lot of people saying like, no, no, this is really good.
yeah,
And they're like, oh yeah, it's Transformers. And you're like, no, no, genuine. Like this is like Daniel Warren Johnson who's done Do a Power Bomb and Murder Falcon. And so they go, okay, I'll take a look. And then like, oh yeah, this is actually really good.
yeah, 100%. So when does Terminator drop? Do you know?
I should know this. I think it's October because they've
October.
been, yeah, that's how much they've been hyping it is the
Yeah,
pre-release
I
stuff.
knew it was round the corner. And do you know much about what the general premise is going to be? Because Terminator as a franchise has been one that's sort of been all over the place in terms.
I do. As far as what I can say, because I don't want to overstep with stuff. It's yeah, I won't get in any trouble for saying it's basically set as if only the first Terminator film existed.
Hmm.
So there's no Terminator 2. There's thankfully no Terminator 3 or onwards. So it's very much more like the fertile ground they can play with. So they're not locked into a massive continuity.
Hmm.
And yeah, Declan's got like a big. I've seen at least the plan for the first 6 issues, and so he's got places he's going with it, and it's a kind of like a larger thing. But I think initially, and again, I don't think this is a spoiler. You're going to see other Terminators, and so like that kind of like a bit of a larger Cyberdyne plan.
Okay.
So yeah, but it's yeah, it looks quite good. It looks like quite thoughtful character pieces from what
I,
I've seen so far.
I like that. I knew about the fact that it was sort of dovetailing from Terminator 1, because I'd heard some people say like, oh well, um, Terminator 2 is obviously where Terminator peaked, and it's like, yeah, but listen to what you've just said there. Like
Yes.
that's where it peaked.
Yeah, so
you know,
you've got nowhere to go.
yeah, exactly. You're not going to dovetail off the back of like one of the most like well-regarded sequels of all time.
Hmm.
But I like that because there is much like Alien and Aliens are in the same continuity, but are two completely different movies.
Hmm.
Terminator and Terminator 2 follow that same vibe. Yes, there's a robot out to kill somebody, but the tone and things like that, and I think the grittiness of Terminator 1 sort of lends itself more to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That was very much one of the things that they Dynamite were kind of leaning towards. Like the kind of term like grittiness that came in a few times, and that kind of real world kind of authenticity was like very much something to go for.
Yeah.
Even to the point with when I was drawing the covers, there were a few times my Transformers DNA was showing through a bit too much, and I was kind of the first take I did. I made the endoskeleton slightly too. It wasn't the skeleton. I made it kind of like it was like a robot. It was a bit too bulky and a bit too expressive. And it's like okay, you've got to rein that in. It looks really good, but it needs to be a skeleton, and it needs to not have it can't be emoting or look manic. It's got to look like a skull.
It's such a funny one, isn't it, as well? Because you mentioned earlier about growing up, with Marvel UK, where it's just like, I mean, the work that Wildman did, and all of those guys, Senior, like, it was all about just making these robots just so darned expressive.
Yes.
Like, in a way that the cartoon just could not match. Galvatron looked manic.
Oh, good lord, doesn't it? Yeah, yeah. He was. There is certain. I was on the triple takeover Discord recently, and there's we were like talking about some comic stuff on there, and somebody's going through the UK issues about 3 every week, and so I thought, oh, cool, I'll catch up on this, and yeah, the artwork in it, like Galvatron did look absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
Like when you can view it again, you think, yeah, he was insane, not just kind of like ha ha ha, like I'm going to shoot you in the back. He was scary. It was nuts.
Oh yeah, yeah.
As a lot of that stuff was.
And it's kind of funny because obviously the Terminator itself, like, is scary, but obviously in a completely different way. It is the complete lack of emotion that, and again, it's that whole scene in Terminator 1. It can't be bargained with, it can't be reasoned with.
Yeah.
It's
that makes it so much scarier.
Yeah, absolutely. That you believe that you could manipulate Galvatron into not killing you if you were clever enough.
Yes.
But
or if it's the cartoon, not even that clever.
Well, that's it. That's it. He's more likely to shoot his own guys than he is than you. So yeah, you're good on that one. So let's talk. You mentioned there about you being sort of freelance for 15 years. When did you start like thinking to yourself like, okay, comics is something that like I want to pursue as a career?
Oh, okay. Well, as I said, I've always loved comics, like literally from way back in the Marvel UK days, and I've always been picking them up. And I always wanted to have a career in art. But when I was starting, it was a mixture of I realized I told myself a lie at the time, as people can tend to do. I told myself like, oh, I'm in the UK. I'd have to go over to America to get with Marvel. Like that was the only comics game in town. And there's no money in it, and I had all these kind of excuses like why I should just go normal illustration. And so for years I did traditional illustration, and it was all very good. But I basically realized I was just afraid. I was too scared of like if this thing that I love and have loved all my entire life and enjoy more than probably any other media, if I tried it and I wasn't good enough for it and I wasn't wanted, I was so scared of that. I think like how soul crushing that would be that I was like that might stop my drawing ever again. So I didn't for so long, and I would do like comics adjacent stuff, and it was the same. It's actually the same with Transformers as well. I'd see people like Nick making things, and I'd always kind of stay away. And I draw the odd Transformers thing every so often, but it's just to kind of keep myself feeling it. And then I think it was about just before, or like possibly just on the kind of like 2020 kind of pandemic time, I thought I've got to do this. Like I'm going to regret it if I don't try. And it's like, and so I then started to do it. I kind of dipped my toes in with some indie stuff, and I learned very much on the job of my first. I had a 4-issue comic series, which is just being made as a graphic novel, and you can see as the pages go on how I'm learning the form because, like, through a lot of arrogance, I thought I've drawn like pretty pictures for so long now. I'm really good at this. I've read comics my entire life, and then when it comes to do it, you're like, oh my god, there's so much more to this than you realize. And so it was very much like trial by fire, learning as I was going about like pacing and page layout and page flow, all these like kind of like everything, but like how I used to completely overwhelm each panel was just filled with stuff. Like each one was treated with the same importance, and you can't do that. The pages don't work as well. They need like a big anchor point in the page where like that's where your detail and your kind of muddy bit goes, and then you've got smaller stuff because it just works with the balance. So I decided to do that, and it was unfortunately I was ever so slightly too late to get on something Transformers related. As I found out, because I just started to send stuff off, or like to get stuff out. I never actually officially applied, but I started to like do a lot of Transformers stuff because I thought I would love to do something Transformers related officially. And then IDW lost the license, and then I found out afterwards because the one of the editors at IDW moved on to Boom, and then when I was doing I was asked to draw Hello Darkness. The writer requested me, Dave Kirk, and then the editor said, "Oh yeah, no, he's a fine choice. Yeah, I was actually looking at him for Transformers when they had the lights," and I was like, "Oh, okay, okay, fine." So no, but it's but you know, Skybound have it, so I'm still holding out hope. I'm going to draw something Transformers related officially.
I love that. Like as you say, you just missed out on it, but it's just I will draw Transformers. It's
Oh
just
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
yeah. I think it's it's really fascinating to hear you say there. Like I was afraid effectively, like because I imagine just like any creative, like there's always got to be that bit in you that just thinks like, right, if I do this and they don't like it, and I've poured my heart and soul into it, like that's going to be hard to deal with.
Yeah, I mean that was also why I avoided Transformers for so long as well. Because it was the same thing. It's like because you can look back over like whatever kind of things you find on the internet. You can see me occasionally doing a Transformers image every so often. But there was a lot of fear, and like because the fandom can be quite critical and judgmental. Like you'll hear lots of like people have their favorite artists, and they also have the ones they don't like, and they're not shy about saying the ones they don't like.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to have again like the property that I love the most be sullied. I didn't want to draw something like, oh, this guy can't draw Transformers. This is terrible. I hate this. Like his stuff is like, why is he doing this? And yeah, I don't know. Something happened a few years ago in my brain where I just thought, oh, do you know what? I've just got to try it. I was like, got to do it. And fortunately, people are very nice about it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's unfortunately, I think, a product of the old Dreamwave situation.
Yeah.
Which is that, when Dreamwave imploded and then IDW took over the license, I just remember so much negativity around EJ's work.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Because the work's great.
It's like, it's EJ Sue. Like,
yes.
This stuff is amazing.
Yeah.
Right. But it doesn't look like what Don was doing at the end of G1. That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
there was even... Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and then we've seen that like time and time again,
Yeah, I was going to say along the same lines. It's been I feel quite fortunate in a way that the Skybound stuff came out when it did, because like for anyone who's familiar with my art style recently in the last few years, you'll see it's kind of quite energetic and quite gritty, and it's not the kind of straight, clean lines that IDW used for so long, and I think the Skybound stuff has kind of helped smooth my introduction to people. Sometimes I think when they see it's like they're now prepared to see Transformers artwork that's not drawn with a ruler.
Yes.
And it will like, kind of like play with stuff to kind of cheat the dynamism and things. So it's like, okay, like this arm is way longer than it should be because it looks like an awesome punch. Rather than like, oh, hang on, no, he's got 3 rivets there, and that kind of attention to detail. I mean, I love that stuff. Do not get me wrong. There is so many like Jack Lawrence's stuff's amazing. Obviously, I did the entire lot, the entire crew.
Mm.
It's just did some really stuff, but it's like I can't do that. It's like I like my messiness and these kind of sketchy lines and stuff.
Yeah, and I think Daniel Warren Johnson has sort of like paved that way, hasn't he? For
Mm,
I remember when Daniel Warren Johnson's first couple of preview pages came out.
yeah.
And again, me as somebody who can appreciate art, but doesn't understand the technicality of it, I
Mm,
remember speaking to Andrew Turnbull, the art director at TFN, and I just said,
yes.
it's kind of like if Nick Roche was taking cocaine, isn't it?
But
And he was like, and I think he got taken a little bit aback, and he was like, yeah, that's sort of like what we're at here. Yeah, it's like,
that's a
um,
terrifying thought.
yeah, because Nick needs all of the energy in the
Oh
world.
yeah, no, he does seem like quite a flat, dull guy.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very lethargic and stuff like
Yes.
that. Until Cult of Personality hits, and then he's off on the
That was so. I know we've talked about this in person already, but I want to go on the record. That was amazing. It was. I was because I'm on the video as well. That was the best part when you pointed out on the video. Like you can literally see my head. Like what's going on?
Yeah, exactly.
It was just the moment, and it was like an actual wrestling thing because I've watched a lot of like wrestling over the years, and watching Simon and James Roberts uh, just suddenly pause as the music comes in, and they think it's an actual honest to god technical fault. And they think like, oh, what's like? Oh, do we stop talking? And then suddenly, like, there's a rumble through the crowd as everybody realizes that Nick's over in the back, and then he comes out posing, and it was
Yeah,
superb. It was
he's
amazing.
a he's a hero to sort.
He really is. That was so good.
I didn't get to see the panel between what ended up being James and Simon,
Yeah.
so I'm watching it, and I'm just like, this is fascinating. This is really interesting. That I could listen to these two talk for hours,
Mm.
and then Cult of Personality hits, and Nick just you know,
Just
and then comes in.
steamrolls in. It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's great. But yeah, the point stands. I think is that like Nick, I think really brought sort of a rawness to Transformers that hadn't been seen for quite some
Yes.
time. Since the old Marvel days,
Mm.
like brought that back. Uh, you know,
Yeah, he
Daniel
really
Warren
did.
Johnson sort of turned that up to 11. And whenever I look at your work, I always get that sort of that real sense of just like there's a grittiness to it
Mm.
that and perhaps why Terminator's such a good fit for you. It's that there's a grittiness to it, there's a rawness to it, but there is just energy in the pages. And
Yes. Yeah.
you know like
Yeah. And do you know what? That was the funny thing about doing the Terminator one. Because people can find the image online now.
mm,
Because I do tend to, as anybody who saw my TFN stuff, like I did a thing of the Dinobots and the Sharkticons fighting, and that was like full on. And I did Beast Wars Megatron, like destroying Optimus from Agenda. And the first Terminator cover I had to do was like the Terminator, the endoskeleton is still underwater
mm,
and it's completely static and it's just looking up from underwater they even asked to have like they said, oh, maybe have a couple of fish in there just not reacting to it at all because like to show how long it's been down there. And so it was very strange to go like, oh cool, I'll do something really high energy. It's like, no, I'm gonna do something really really still.
yeah.
But I make up for it in the second cover, which is coming out. You see, that's a full on David Cousins, that one.
No, yeah, it's like, I really underwater still. Yeah,
It's like I can make it work. It doesn't feel it's playing to my strengths, but
yeah, yeah. It's
you know
funny,
what?
you were talking there about sort of learning on the job,
Yeah.
as you're doing interiors,
Mm,
because I think a lot of people, if they are coming into comic books, they they think often that it's just a lot of little pretty pictures inside of boxes
mm,
that tell a sequential story. like you look at something like Peanuts, for example,
Yes. Yeah.
or some, where it's very simple, like
Mm.
there's basically no detail to the backgrounds or anything like that. It's 4 panels, tells a little story, that's it.
Yes.
Um, but I think what you were talking about there about how do you control pace in a comic book? How do you draw the attention of the reader to where you want them to be? Like in the old Marvel days,
Mm.
the trick was everybody in the background was colored one color, and then the
Yes. Yeah.
character that you wanted was actually colored the color that they're supposed to be.
Yes.
You know, but you can't get away with those tricks now in comics.
Do you know what? It's funny. The more you look through comics, the more you see people will pull stunts. It won't be quite as obvious.
Mm,
Um, for example, there's a comic which is coming out, which I've kind of mid production, but I got JP Bove to draw to color some of it, and he used that trick, and it works really well because it was a room full of people, and you had your main characters were colored, and then the other colors that kind of just fade out into this kind of purple. But it's more subtle. Just with like today's techniques, you could be kind of it's less kind of like okay, these ones are literally the only things in color. You can more fade it, but there are lots of techniques along those lines which are kind of hugely important, and it's funny how people don't spot them until you like properly study for them.
oh yeah, colorists are like the unsung hero.
They
Like,
really are, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a big thing to really go into like nerdy about comic coloring now.
mm,
Um, there's a tendency, I think, a lot in the kind of late '90s, early 2000s, when people really discovered digital coloring. There was a tendency to draw like every color in the shop with every gradient, like every single thing's there, and everything's painted quite realistically, which doesn't look that good to my mind. It's kind of like things can be like um, if you have like a sky with a different color than blue, you can set the mood of it, and it doesn't look wrong. Like you can have like a kind of like off green sky, and you don't look at it and think like, well, the sky's not normally that color, but then you look at it and think like, oh, this feels weird. Like this
mm,
feels kind of, and it kind of has that emotion of like something slightly tense or wrong. And yeah, there's a lot more subtlety. I quite like it when people get a bit more experimental with their colors.
yeah.
Did you hear one of the? I can't think which panel it was. It was one of the comic-based panels this year.
Mm.
Um, somebody must have been Simon Furman, I guess, was saying about like that Jeff Senior was told to rein it in, and he had to go work by the 6 panels.
Yeah,
And it's like they literally, and I was like, oh my god, that's criminal. It's like
I
reining in Jeff Senior.
yeah, reining in Jeff Senior by Marvel US because it
Yeah.
didn't fit which is hilarious. But like tying it back, to coloring and Marvel. I
Mm.
mean, there's the famous story, isn't there, in the '90s where Marvel bought Malibu Comics
Yes.
purely because
Yeah.
Malibu were like doing digital coloring before
Yeah.
anybody else, and they were like, "How are you doing this? How is this being achieved? What we'll
Yeah.
do is we'll buy the company to find out." And it's like, yeah, it's called Photoshop. It's like, like, yeah. But I know, like, how in the world do you like look at Jeff Senior's artwork? How do you look at Target 2006
Yeah. Yeah.
and say, yeah, this is a bit too wild? Like, I can understand the argument being made today, especially given the like prevalency of comicsology and guided view reading
Yeah.
of comics, which that could be a conversation all on its own.
Yes.
But the idea of, okay, comics are going to be read one panel at a time now, and so they need to be contained within a
Yeah.
box or something. Like, I can understand that as an argument. I don't like it because where's the dynamic composition?
Yeah. I'm not a fan. I think there's a lot of you get a feel when you see the whole page. Even if you've not taken in what the following panels are, you get a feel for like the kind of pacing and the rhythm of it. The whole
Yeah,
if the panel's cluttered, if there's stuff like going over the borders, you feel the chaos, which you don't feel if you go from panel to panel to panel.
Mm.
Or if it's just sparse and white and there's nothing there, you kind of feel that kind of loneliness or the length of time that there is, or even the kind of timelessness of it. It's
Yeah, that's it. Otherwise, we'll just go to 9-panel grids, and every book can be Watchmen. You know, like
yes, yeah,
that.
yeah. So Watchmen did it great, but it's like, yeah, it's like if I'm one of those artists where like every time I say like, oh, if you're on a grid, it's like, oh yeah, but how about it's like, how about we try this?
You know, like when I think about like pacing in comics and stuff, and I know this doesn't really apply because it's over multiple issues, but you know, um, the one that always stands out to me is the countdown to Action 700, the death of Superman.
Mm,
You know, it's the fact that
yes.
it's uh, issue 6 is 6 pages, 6 panels a page. Uh, uh, you know,
Yeah.
5 panels,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you get to 700, and it's just 22 splash
Just the
pages.
yeah.
And it's just this, you know, and they said they did it deliberately because it's just this countdown. It's just this rhythm that you don't even realize is there until somebody points it out to you, and you're just like,
Yeah.
oh, that's really clever.
Yeah.
But
It's stuff like that works really well.
yeah, but instead it's like, okay, no, everything's going to now be here so that we can upload it to Comixology or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, like,
Do you know what? I think you made a really interesting point earlier, which I'd not really thought of. But um, you were quite right when you said like when Nick Roach turned up on the scene, he really brought with him that Marvel UK energy
mm,
that I don't think we'd felt for a long time. Both because obviously he was sort of writing the plots for the record stuff as well, and it felt a lot like when I read it, it's like, oh, okay, this is what I remember Transformers comics being like.
yeah,
And then with Daniel Warren Johnson, he came in very much like I think he's gone on record and saying the 86 movie is really his touchstone, and so he's kind of coming in and you can feel it. He's got that kind of that energy for it. Like people are dying left, right, and
oh
center.
yeah, no one
It's
is
all quite
safe.
heightened.
Like,
Yeah, and there's loads and loads of like excessively cool moments like constantly happening.
yeah.
And it's yeah, I'd not thought about that, but yeah, so certain artists do bring a sensibility with them, which is nice.
Oh, 100%. Like, I mean, we're all products of the stuff that we, you know, absorb, in our
Mm.
youth and things like that. I think, you know, the really creative thing, as you have so, you know, incredibly pointed out in your artwork and stuff, is just like, okay, how do I take the thing that I love, but then inject me and my style into it? You
Yes,
know, and
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
difference. That's the
yeah.
difficult bit. And yeah, I mean, the technical side of creating comics is way over my head. You know, as
It's a lot. It really is. Like I'm really. I'm not saying that just because I do comics now,
yeah,
but I genuinely, when I first started to do it, I really felt like prepared to do it, and then very quickly was like, oh my god, no, this is I am not
yeah,
because it's ironic because like being like the comics artwork doesn't pay as much as any comics artist will tell you as much as
mm,
other stuff. Um, and there's so much to it, and there's so much to think about, and it really isn't just like, oh, this one thing goes here, this goes here, and it forces you to be an honest artist as well. Back
yeah,
when I was doing normal illustration, I was quite often doing editorial stuff, so I was doing like pin-ups and things. And you can cheat a lot of stuff if you don't want to draw it. You can have like a character standing in the front who's quite bulky, and then you can draw a complicated one slightly behind, like looking out, or they'll be behind something in the scenery, and it's going to be easy. But then when you've got a comic, you've got to draw, especially Transformers. Good lord, you've got to draw all of these characters from multiple angles, and it's got to make sense.
yeah.
And
Oh,
they've got to look like they're in scale. It's wow. It's a lot. It's good fun. It's really good fun.
and it's not as if you can, you know, as an artist, it's not as if you get stuck. You can just ring the boss up and go, "How do I do this?"
Yeah.
You know, it's like, okay, I need to figure this out. This doesn't make sense because perhaps
Mm,
the writer has just written it as a throwaway,
yeah.
but it doesn't work within, you know, what I'm building in terms of this panel or whatever. Now you can
Mm,
obviously go back to the writer and you can have a conversation or whatever it may be, um, but the technical side of being able to do it is insane. And as you say, couple that with deadlines, couple that with long
yeah.
working hours, often in solitary confinement, you hear an awful lot of.
Oh, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
This is almost like day release now. Me talking to you is like, hey, I'm talking to somebody.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's nice. It sort of brings us full circle. We're talking. We talked just before this about the fact that neither of us really knew that it was a bank holiday here in the UK.
Yeah.
And that's because time has other meanings when you've got deadlines.
It really
Um,
does.
but yeah, I'm very conscious, however, of the fact that I'm taking up so much of your time. And we could talk about comic books. Like I feel like we've talked an awful lot, but like we could just like spend
Oh
another
yeah.
half hour talking about any number of the topics that we touched on. But I am conscious of taking up too much of your time, so perhaps we'll park this and do a part two. But before we do, we talked a little bit about Terminator.
Mhm.
But is the work you've done for Boom back available now? I know it's sold out, but
Yes, they've. Well, I say that I'm not 100%. They definitely there was a second print run,
okay.
which I think is still available. But yeah, it really that thing really caught fire. I mean,
Mm.
it had a load of great talent, and so it's kind of I was very pleased to be part of it. But I didn't realize how big it was going to be. And I think they got caught off guard as well. Because I've said second print. I think it's actually now in its multiple different cover printings now
Mm.
to try to keep up with it because it's just something about it as it really took off,
Yeah.
which was lovely. Because when I was drawing for it, I actually genuinely thought when we were first asked, because it was me and Dave Cook, and neither of us had worked with Boom before. I thought, oh, they might be taking a few chances on more indie artists and doing something, and just as test the waters, because the anthology is pretty safe. Like if we stuffed up, it wouldn't matter because we'd be somebody else's work. But then to find out had so many big names in it, and when I read it, it's like this is actually really good.
Mm.
It's so weird, like I can say it like an unbiased way as well. I was like, I would buy this even if I wasn't in it. It's actually very good.
Yeah.
I mean, my bit was awesome, obviously, but
Well, of course. I mean, that goes without saying, But as with any creative art, you've got to keep your ego in check. You've got to be humble.
yes, or Nick wrote.
Well,
No, do you know, I'm teasing. He's absolutely lovely. He's such a nice guy.
and you know what? I think that's a testament to the power of comics because anybody I've ever come across who's worked in comics in a professional way,
Mm.
they're always super nice because it's nice for them to see daylight once or twice,
Yeah,
be able to socialize with people. So
yeah. I can't think who it was I was talking to, but it was somebody else, kind of comics based, and we realised that they're all postal workers and like delivery people can tell who freelancers are because we're always really chatty with them, and we'll always like talk to them, and it's like, and I will say hi to like the local delivery driver like just around the street when I see him, and it's like, oh god, it's a thing because we're all so desperate to speak to people.
yeah,
It's why I love like TFNation. I spoke to more people in those kind of like 3.5 days than I think I normally speak to in about 2 years. It's just like
yeah,
so much. I actually couldn't sleep. I came back really wired. Normally, I'm really lucky. I can just go like sleep on command. Basically, you give me 5 minutes, and I can just do it intentionally. But when I came back from TFNation this year, I was like, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and I cannot get to sleep. And I think it's just my brain was processing so many conversations.
See,
It's great
I
fun.
like to think that as the checks and balances of your situation, I was dead to the world.
But that's not surprising. I mean, you had about like 3 billion steps a day, I think.
Honestly, the legs are still recovering even now. But listen, before we wrap this up, is
Yes.
there anywhere that you want to direct people to, just so they can check out more of your stuff?
Oh yeah, yeah. Go on then. I've just got a new website which I've made, which is davidcousinsart.com, which, if you spell my surname, is Cousens. And also, there's a link off there to my my Coffee or Ko-fi or however you want to say it, that shop. where you can buy prints online from me as that's expanding. And I'm also on all social media as at David Cousins, which you
Yeah,
probably most people here that kind of know that. But apart from TikTok, where I'm the David Cousins because I got there late. Because I stubbornly didn't want to be on TikTok, and I was like, I don't really like it, and so I went to claim my name. It's like somebody's at the first time in history, somebody's beaten me to the name.
that that's the problem with there's too many social media. Like I discovered Threads yesterday, just
Oh
yesterday
god, yeah,
of the time of this recording, uh, because I kept getting adverts for it. It was like, you'd go on Instagram, Threads, and I was like, I
yeah,
have no idea what Threads is. Then I finally downloaded it. I was like, oh, it's X without adverts. Right, got you.
yes,
Okay,
yeah. It's Facebook's Twitter,
yeah, it's like,
but it's
okay,
yeah.
fine,
No,
I guess.
I know. I mean, at least with that one, it was easy. It just imported loads of my contacts and stuff from
True.
one of the others. But it's I I don't know about you. I get tired of all this that's gonna make me sound old, but it's just like every time it's like, oh, there's a new social media thing you got to go to. It's like, oh, really? It's like I've just got talking to everybody on this one.
But the problem is when you are your brand,
Yeah, that's it.
like that's it. Yeah, I mean, as you say, and I think that's a good a thing for aspiring artists to listen to is you got your gig by posting a response on X, Twitter,
Yeah,
um, and so as you say, you can sit there and doubt whether or not you could ever make it and don't do anything, or you can pull the trigger and lots of exciting things to be coming up down the pipeline.
it if there's one thing, if there is anybody listening to this, I was going to say creatives, but do you know what? Just generally, if there's something you want to do, just do it. It's like just try. It's like it may not happen immediately. It may not go exactly to plan, but if you don't do it, nothing is ever going to happen.
No.
And you'd be surprised how many things go right and how many things like do work and go well and how many wonderful people you get to meet as a result of it.
Yeah.
It's I mean, it's like I said with the Transformers thing. I was so scared of drawing Transformers in case people wouldn't like it. And now I've got so many friends and people like genuine friends as well, not just like kind of casual acquaintances, but people who I'm really happy to spend time with and see.
Yeah.
All because of that.
And now I never want to draw another Optimus Prime again because
No, I love it, but Transformers, the Transformers Prime Optimus, his shoulders are a nightmare. I've
oh
discovered.
really?
Yeah, yeah,
I,
that printed. I thought this should be great fun because Prime has loads of energy, and then no, oof. His shoulders were made to be 3D modeled and not rendered by hand. They were...
I I always remember that one of the very first Transformers conventions that I ever went to as a fan.
Yeah.
I remember asking one of the artists, and I can't remember who it was, but I asked one of the artists. I said, "How do you get around the fact that you sometimes need to pose these characters in ways that do not make any sense whatsoever?" How does, let's say, Jazz fold his arms? His
Yes.
chest goes out
Yeah.
from the end. How does his arms fold? And I remember the artist in question, and I can't remember who it was. I really looked at me dead in the eyes and went, that they're robots that transform from outer space, and your problem is that they can't fold their arms.
That's a fantastic answer.
I was like, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I shall shut up now.
Yeah, it's one that's like for me a long time like drawing any of the Seekers' wings.
Hmm.
I was like, where do they go? Or their cannons. They've got so many things which stop them moving, and it's like, do you know what? You fudge it.
Yeah,
You have to. You fudge it, and then nobody cares because everybody's happy like about the midgets themselves.
correct. And as long as it's not fudged to the point of a Jim Lee,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you will be forgiven. You will be forgiven. But listen, Dave, thanks so
Yes.
much for
Yes.
taking the time today.
No.
We're
No.
gonna
It's
have
been
to.
good fun.
Well, I say we, as in like there's anybody other than me doing this. I'm gonna have to get you back on at some point because I feel like we need to I don't know, pick some like top 3 comic books or something like that.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
That would be really cool. if you're here for Transformers discussion,
Yeah. Do I want to talk about Transformers?
yeah. Well,
I would love that. That'd be fantastic.
Here's a simple one to end on.
Yep.
Did you buy anything this year?
Do you know what? I did TFNation this year. I'd set myself. I thought, right, okay, I'll get something on the Sunday, and I'll go in the kind of early morning, and then I forgot that I had to check out Sunday morning, and then I had to rush down, and because one of the things I've got my big banner stand behind me, and because it was leaning forward slightly, I think the aircon was knocking it. I'd used one of the coat hangers from my room and put it just to weigh it backwards. And it suddenly occurred to me, I thought, I'm going to get charged. If there's a coat hanger missing in my room, I'm not going to get charged for this. And so I rushed up and down, and then everything opened, and I was like, okay, I can't go now. And I stayed busy on the Sunday. So Saturday was obviously completely busy throughout. I stayed busy on Sunday pretty much through the entire time. And it was literally just towards the end, the last hour when it was winding down, I thought like, oh, I'll go. And every time I went to go, somebody came up to buy something, which left me 5 minutes in the end to try to. And so when you have no specific thing you're looking for, you don't know which all the stores are where the best kind of offers are going to be. I just couldn't buy anything. And so I did buy stuff from people on the forge, and I bought a thing from Simon Furman, and I bought like another like a t-shirt from Lucan and Jim Stafford. I got some stuff, but Transformers wise, literally yesterday I bought some stuff. I got some stuff delivered as my late TFNation present, so I got myself some Beast Wars characters.
Excellent. Nothing wrong with a little bit of Beast Wars.
No, it's good stuff.
Yeah. Great. Well, listen, thanks again for taking the time. Thank you all for spending time with us. Say bye-bye, David.
Bye-bye, David. Well, technically I can send that to you, so that isn't such a lame dad joke as I thought.
Works, doesn't it?
Yeah, it still works. But bye, everybody. It's great to speak.